Today I'm going over the last section in chapter 2 called The Meaning of the Last Judgment. One of the ways in which you can correct the magic miracle confusion is to remember that you did not create yourself. You are apt to forget this when you become egocentric, and this puts you in a position where a belief in magic is virtually inevitable. All right, so it's telling us that the magic miracle problem, magic meaning believing in the illusory world, miracle meaning remembering the truth. We're confused about that, right? This is the same dilemma that he's always talking about in the Course. Love versus fear, truth versus the lie, the big lie, right? It says when we become egocentric is when we forget this. We forget the truth when we become egocentric. This is when we get duped by the illusion, when we believe in the ego thought system. That's how we get confused and we forget. And it says this puts us in a position where a belief in magic is virtually inevitable, meaning that as soon as we go in that direction and we become egocentric, automatically we're going to believe in the illusion. It is inevitable that we will believe in magic, which is the illusion. It says your will to create was given you, hello Zeke, by the Creator, who was expressing the same will in his creation. All right, so we have a desire to create. We have a desire to extend love, just like God did with us. That's how we came to be. That's how we were created. Since creative ability rests in the mind, everything you create is necessarily a matter of will. All right, so which teacher we choose is a matter of will. We have to use our free will to make the choice. It's there for us all along. Jesus is always there for us. The right part of our mind is always there for us. The truth is always there waiting for us. It's just up to us to use our free will to make the choice to know the truth, or to use our free will to make the choice to be in denial of the truth and stay within the ego thought system. It's always up to our will. It also follows that whatever you alone make is real only in your own sight, though not in the mind of God. So no matter what we may think, no matter what we may believe within the illusory world, it doesn't change the truth of God. We will believe it because, like it says, we make it real in our own sight. That's us believing in our illusion. That's us believing the false ego thought system. So when we make it real within our own sight, we will see what we believe. We will make all of that real. But none of that ever changes the truth of God, the mind of God, or our right mind, or our Christ consciousness. None of that ever changes, no matter how much we want to stay in denial and keep believing in the ego thought system. This basic distinction leads directly into the real meaning of the last judgment. All right, so paragraph 2 is going to explain to us what the last judgment is. The last judgment is one of the most threatening ideas in your thinking. This is because you do not understand it. Judgment is not an attribute of God. It was brought into being only after the separation, when it became one of the many learning devices to be built into the overall plan. So the last judgment is just another tool, just like Jesus, just like miracles, all right, just like forgiveness. The last judgment is just another tool that we can use to wake up and remember the truth. Hello, Zeke. Hello. Hello. It tells us that the last judgment will extend over a very long period of time. However, it can be greatly shortened by miracles. The device for shortening but not abolishing time. So it's telling us that miracles don't end time. They don't make time go away. Time is an illusion. Even miracles are an illusion. They're just a tool that we use within the illusory world in order to wake up. Oh, I see my daughter in the background. So it's not going to abolish time. It's not going to make time go away, but it will continuously collapse time and make our illusory journey much shorter. Because next it tells us that if a sufficient number become truly miracle-minded, this shortening process can be virtually immeasurable. All right, so the more of us who are miracle-minded, the more of us who remember the truth, the more quickly we will all wake up from this dream. That is collapsing time. It is essential, however, that you free yourself quickly, because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. All right, so if we want to be miracle workers and we want to bring the truth to our mind and to the one mind of everyone, then it's suggesting that we free ourselves quickly from the ego thought system, from the false beliefs, to free ourselves quickly, because the more we free ourselves and the more we remember truth, the quicker we are waking up and the quicker we are helping everyone else to wake up, because all minds are joined. When we remember the miracle, we help everyone remember the miracle. Paragraph 3 is telling us that the Last Judgment is generally thought as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment. However, you may think that punishment is deserved. It tells us that punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness. And the aim of the Last Judgment is to restore right-mindedness to you. The Last Judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. After this, the ability to choose can be directed rationally. Until this distinction is made, however, the vacillations between free and imprisoned will cannot but continue. All right, so all of those are fancy words just to tell us that the Last Judgment is another way to say the final judgment that we make of seeing the truth, the final judgment that we make to wake up from the dream. That is the Last Judgment. This is when we are reaching atonement, when we have completely undone the ego thought system. So in our world, in our illusory world, we think of the Last Judgment as being something scary, something that is punishment, that God would be punishing us for something that we've done. But the Course is telling us, no, that's all wrong, and it doesn't mean that at all. That what the Last Judgment is simply meaning having correct judgment to identify with your right mind and right-minded thoughts. And the reason that it is the Last Judgment is because it restores right-mindedness, right? It's right evaluation. We have evaluated correctly. We see correctly. So we don't need any more judgments after that because we're done judging. Now we understand, oh, wait, I see correctly. I'm awakened. And it tells us that until we do this, we're going to vacillate between a free and imprisoned mind. So this is what we're all doing. We're all practicing miracles, right? And every time we do that and we practice forgiveness, we remember the truth. So then we're vacillating, into our right mind correctly. But then lots of times we forget, right? So then we're vacillating the other way. We're going towards the ego thought system. We're forgetting the truth. Okay, Zeke is slobbering on me. Paragraph 4 tells us the first step towards freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. Another way of saying love or fear, right? Ego or spirit. It's the same as false or true. So that's our first step, is seeing the difference between what is false and what is true. This is a process of separation in the constructive sense, right? Not separation like the mistaken thought that we've separated from God, but using it constructively. And it says, this is a process of separation in the constructive sense and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse, right? The apocalypse. Ooh, scary, the end of the world, right? No, this is a good thing. We want the illusory world to end. We want the apocalypse. Everyone will ultimately look upon his own creations and choose to preserve only what is good, just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. All right, so it's when we judge correctly, when we are using our right mind. At this point, the mind can begin to look with love on its own creations because of their worthiness. At the same time, the mind will inevitably disown the miscreations which, without belief, will no longer exist. So that's just a way to say that when we don't believe in something, it will no longer exist. So when we're in wrong-minded thoughts and we're believing the misbelief of the ego thought system, then the truth is no longer existing in our mind. And that's when we descend into fear and everything related to fear. But if we identify with our right mind, we are using denial correctly and we end up denying the illusory world. And then the only thing that will exist for us is the real world. okay? Because what we no longer believe in will no longer exist. So if we no longer believe in the ego thought system, if we no longer believe in the illusory world, it will no longer exist because everything is coming from our mind. The term last judgment is frightening only because it has been projected onto God. In our world, we have decided that the last judgment means that God is going to punish us for our sins. All right? So it's saying, no, no, that's not what it means. And it's only frightening to us because we projected that onto God. We made that up, that God is going to judge us for our sins. We did that with projection. But we are also frightened because we associate the word last with death. Okay, so our ego automatically becomes fearful, thinking last means the death of the ego, that the ego will no longer exist, which is the same reason that the ego fights tooth and nail for us to not know this truth that the Course is teaching us. The ego doesn't want us to know because the ego knows that means it's the end of the ego. It knows it means ego death, and it doesn't want to die. So that's why it fights so hard to keep our mind rooted in the ego thought system. And that's why it's our job to use our free will to choose our right mind, to choose the thought system of spirit. It says that this is an outstanding example of upside down perception. If the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life, right? Because as soon as we exit this dream world, as soon as we get out of this nightmare illusion we've got going here, and we go home to God, we go home to our true self, we go home to our true spirit, that is the doorway to life. That's when we actually start living. That's when we actually know who and what we really are, and we can really live. Because what we're doing here is not living. We're just pretending. We're just procrastinating until we get to the point where we decide to really live. It says this is an outstanding example of upside down perception. Because when we believe in the illusory world, we are looking at things upside down. We have perverted and inverted the truth. So when we accept the last judgment, this is when we can begin real life. It says no one who lives in fear is really alive. Okay, we're not really alive. Nothing in this dream world is really alive as long as there is fear. All right, and we all feel fear sometimes. That's why we appear to be here. We would not appear to be in this world if we were not mistaken, if we were not believing to some degree in the ego thought system. All right, so none of us are really alive right now as long as we think that we're here. Your own last judgment cannot be directed towards yourself because you are not your own creation. You can, however, apply it meaningfully and at any time to everything you have made and retain in your memory only what is creative and good. All right, that's all a fancy way of just describing forgiveness, okay? And the practice of forgiveness is that we overlook the illusory world, we overlook bodies, okay, to see beyond the world of form, to see the spirit of who and what everyone and everything really is. So for me, I just imagine everything as white light. And when I look beyond form and I see the white light, I remember the spirit. I remember who and what we really are. That's just one little trick. There's many ways to do it, many visuals you can use, many thought processes that you can put your mind through to remember the truth, to remember that we are not here and that we are really just spirit. So that's what practicing forgiveness is. That's what it is describing here. And it is how we go home to our right mind. It's how we go home to God. It's how we go home to who and what we really are. It's how we start living. It's how we walk through this doorway to life. The purpose of time is solely to, and it puts in quotes, give you time to achieve this judgment. All right? So time is an illusion. It's just here to give us time to accept that last judgment, to accept the atonement, to remove the obstacles that appear to be here blocking God's love. And all that is a misbelief in our ego thought system, a misbelief in separation. It's not true. So when we remember the truth, which is the oneness, that we are all one and that we are all spirit and we are all God and we are all coming from the same source, then it says it is your own perfect judgment of your own perfect creations. All right? We are one with God. God created us out of a desire to extend love. We are just like God because God created us just like God. We also desire to extend love. That is forgiveness. Every time we are offering love to another, which means we are remembering that other person, being, whatever it is just love, is just spirit. That's the truth of what that person or thing really is. When we do that, we are judging correctly and we are extending love, the love of God. We are extending love to our creations, our perfect creations. That's forgiveness. That is the job of the miracle worker. That's what we're doing here. And that's why we're attracted to this course, because inside we know it's true. Inside, the right part of our mind is whispering to us and telling us who and what we really are, which is why we resonate with these messages of the course. When everything you retain is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. This is your part in the atonement. All right, that's basically what I just said. So these are all beautiful, fancy words to simply mean that when we choose our right mind and we remember to practice forgiveness, that this is our job as a miracle worker, and we are helping ourselves and everyone else to awaken. And when we do that, when we finally awaken and have our last judgment, that is the atonement. It's when we have removed all of the obstacles to love so that we can be one with our Creator, God Source Creation, and one another, because we are all one, only extending love eternally. That is who and what we all really are.